The average player can find blocked centres confounding. They don't crop up very often, and when they do, they can often be mishandled very badly. So I'm going to take you on a tour of the blocked centre now, using a couple of games from one of my favourite openings, the Czech Benoni. And the first game comes from the Nice Olympiad back in 1974 between Michael Woodhams, a very strong Australian player at the time, and Jose Luis Guerra, who was representing Venezuela. Now, a typical block position can occur in the Czech Benoni after the move e5, knight c3, d6, e4, bishop e7. And here we see the central pawn formation is completely blocked. So what are the guidelines for this type of position? Well, basically in a block position, I think the first thing you need to display is patience. Patience is very much the order of the day. You can't go lashing out, opening things up at the wrong moment, because the position can rebound in your face. The second thing to consider is the idea of pawn levers. The way white opens this game, the way black counters, is to prepare pawn breaks or pawn levers. What should white be looking at? Well, he should certainly be looking at the move f4 in this position. That's one way to get to grips with the black centre. And the other way is to slowly prepare b4. Either of these moves, which are well timed, will open up the game for the white pieces. From black's perspective, black has two counter pawn breaks. He can look to play b5, although with a lot of white pieces covering that square, b5 seems difficult to get in. Or, and this is the way most Czech Benoni players play, they slowly prepare the move f5, which hopefully will give counterplay along the lines of the king's India defence, where after f5 black can hope for a kingside attack. We also should think about good and bad pieces when we consider block positions. And to do that, in this position, we have to look at the central pawn formation. We can certainly categorise the bishop on e7 as bad, blocked in behind its own central pawns. So I suppose you should say that white's bishop on d3 is also potentially bad, because it's blocked in behind the pawns on e4, d5 and c4. Both players would be looking to maybe exchange those bad pieces off as the game progresses. So patience, good and bad pieces, and pawn breaks, pawn levers. Let's see if the players are thinking about those sorts of things as we proceed through the game. So Woodhams plays bishop d3, which is a normal move, just stabilising the centre, and Guerra castles. White goes knight f3, and now black plays knight e8. A good move. I like that move, and it shows some respect for black's position. The knight makes room for f5, but no way can black play that move just yet. Instead, though, in the Czech Benoni, there is a typical scheme, a typical way of developing the position so as to get in f5, and that involves the move g6, followed by knight to g7, after which hopefully black will be in good shape to play f5. Now, it may be that he doesn't play that immediately. Quite often in the Czech Benoni, black goes through a slow sequence of moves. He moves this knight to d7, he moves this knight across to f6, then he goes g6, then he goes knight g7, he plays his king into the corner, then he moves his knight back to g8, then he goes f5. And if all that sounds long-winded, it is. That's why a lot of grandmasters don't like this opening. It takes black an awful long time to play f5 at the right moment. And of course, white is using that time to hopefully prepare himself for f5 when it arrives. What you often find in the Czech Benoni is that if black plays f5 too early, he can be completely blown away. But as I say, you know, knight e8 is a step in the right direction. Well, Woodhams plays h3, which even at that time was recommended. Boris Spassky won some very nice games with this idea, just trying to cramp black on the king side by playing g4, hopefully to start an attack. Guerra plays bishop d7. Okay, he figures, I can't play f5 just yet. I'm thinking about b5. But it's really, really difficult to get that move b5 in, as you're going to see. And queen e2 just emphasises that. So white has what? 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces covering b5. How is black ever going to get that in? Knight ec7. Well, again, I have to say, I really don't like that move. I don't understand it. It's only good if black can get b5 in. I think black should simply try to get f5 in by playing g6. Doesn't look likely, but having played the knight to a6, but there are ways for black to try and get f5 in. I mean, he could play his knight to g7, then he'd have to bring his knight again via a very long route, knight c7 to e8 to f6, and then go through the whole rigmarole again. Or black could play, I suppose, knight ac7, where if white played a4, which is not necessary, of course, then black could play his knight back to a6 and hop into b4. There are various ways to play this position. I don't like knight ec7. a3, very good move. Cutting down on the activity of the black knights. The black knights are tripping over each other's toes in this position. Queen e8. He doesn't seem to understand that he's never going to get b5 in. And white stamps on the idea by playing knight b5. Now that's a paradoxical move, but it's a very good one in this particular situation. Woodham shows extremely good understanding of the position when he plays knight b5. Normally with war space you would not be inviting an exchange of pieces because that eases the defence, but in this case black's pieces are so jumbled up and he lacks an effective pawn break, so white confidently gains space on the queen side. Now he's got black throttled over there and he's planning to bring his knight round to c4, and once he's got that knight on c4 he can then start to think about probing on both sides of the board. He can think about b4, he can think about f4, he can think about moving his king, maybe moving his rook to g1, getting on with h4 and g5. This is a horrible position for black. So queen to d8, knight to d2, and that despite the exchange of pieces. In fact, what I like about this game is Woodham's, in a way, he breaks all the rules of this position. He invites exchanges, and then he allows black to get rid of his bad bishop. Now, normally, this idea of bishop g5 is good for black in the Czech Benoni because, you know, you've got this bishop stuck in behind your pawns. You really want to get rid of it. Yet here, it's much more important that white maintains his spatial edge, and he has a tremendous knight on c4, driving black completely passive. So, very good play there by Woodhams, despite the exchange of bishops coming up. King to d2. Well, with that move, white keeps all his options open. He could play with h4. We don't know yet whether he's thinking about playing with b4. He's displaying a bit of patience. He's not really revealing his hand here. He keeps all options open. Black plays b6, closing things down. Another quiet move by Woodhams. He wants to see what black's doing. The answer to that is nothing. White plays f3. Black plays h6. White goes queen h2. So now it becomes clear white's thinking about playing h4. Black takes on e3. Knight takes e3. And now you see this idea of h4 is getting very, very dangerous. And I'm not sure how black is going to solve his problems here. He tried queen h4 in the game. If he goes queen g5, let's say, allowing h4 and puts his queen in on f4, well then I think white really has more than his fair share of the game here by playing, for instance, a move like rook h5. You can see that black is in real trouble in this position. So not liking a variation like that, Guerrero plays queen h4. White goes rook a f1, and now Woodham says, well, I've got another string to my bow here. I'm going to crack you open by playing f4. So white has everything in this position at his disposal. He's got b4, he's got f4, he can put his knight on c4 at a moment's notice. This is not how to play the Czech Benoni. Queen to e7. Well, rook a8 is a possibility. At least then black has some visions of being able to play a6. He plays queen e7, white gets on with it. White plays rook a8, black plays rook a8, and now g5. Opening things up on the king side is going to lead to a demolition of the black king, so he blocks, and now comes a well-timed f4, before black can even contemplate the move a6. So what did black do wrong? I think he ended up with that jumble of pieces on the queen side. He didn't really understand the position, I don't think. It looks as though he was playing for the wrong pawn break and ended up in this horribly passive situation as a result, where white is massing his pieces now on the f-file for a big attack, and black is driven completely passive. So the knight comes to c4 to tie down that black knight on e8. Now white triples his major pieces on the f-file, very instructive play. Black has been forced to play rook d8 in order to move his knight. The queen comes back to g3, making room for the rook to come into f6. I mean, this is really an attack which is running on oiled wheels. d6 has to be defended, and now white just sacks the exchange with queen f4. Of course, black can't take it because he's now got it mated on g7. So bishop g4, rook f2, rook d7, king c2. White can just make quiet moves in this position. Bishop f5. Okay, but black was running out of ideas. A nice variation occurs after rook d8 with black treading water, white pressing home with e5. Possible now that he moved his king off the d file. Very nice. If we go takes, white recaptures, and if white takes on d5 here, then we have knight c6, queen e1, and now rook f1, with amazingly nowhere to go for the black queen. But of course, this sort of thing will happen in a situation where you've got fantastically posted pieces and his pieces are on bad squares. You know, the tactics work in your favour all the way. So black tried bishop f5, e takes f5, knight takes f6, trying to bail out by getting some pieces off the board. F takes g6. Turns out in this position that if he goes queen takes f4, we can just take back, and if takes, a winning ending is the upshot of this attack. Yes, it's true. I think white is winning this endgame fairly comfortably. So queen g7 in the game, queen f6 insisting on the exchange. Once again, we get this situation here that if king g7 and takes, we can just take on f8 and take on g6 with the same endgame. Queen f6, rook e8, desperation, g takes f7, check, end of the game. Black resigned, with multiple captures on f7 coming up, and then a capture on d6. Resignation is quite justified. So that was a tremendous example of how to play the white position in the Czech Benoni. But of course, black handled the position rather badly. Just goes to show you how difficult these positions are, even for master players. But we'll proceed now to another example where black actually shows us how to do it.